Everybody, Jimmy Smith here to own my picks post UFC 309. Easy to own your picks when a bunch of favorites won. There's only one upset. We'll get to that in a minute. But we start off on the main card, Mauricio Ruffy versus James Yontop. Kickboxing with MMA gloves. Ruffy took the kind of risks that are going to bite him at the next level. He drops his hands a lot, relies a little bit on his athleticism and his speed, and that tends to get more and more difficult as you get into the contender status, and even the mid-level it gets really difficult. So I saw the problems he's going to have. Also, he didn't finish strong. Yontop, the one round he won was round number 3. So Yontop did finish stronger, and Ruffy sort of ran out of gas a little bit. Did have good timing on his power punches. He knows how to land them effectively, but he doesn't quite set them up that well. I see the little things that are going to catch up to him in a minute if he doesn't change things around heading to that next level. And I don't know when he gets to that next level necessarily. This fight isn't necessarily going to do it. It's going to take a couple more, especially in a tough division. So anyway, Mauricio Ruffy over James Yontop. Anybody could have called that one. He was a huge favorite. I called him to win, so there you go, 1-0. Viviane Araujo, Karine Silva. Viviane Araujo pulls off the upset by unanimous decision. She fought a really disciplined, really veteran fight. Controlled her range well, didn't allow herself to get into any exchanges or any grappling positions where it was about speed and versatility. She was really solid on top when she got on top. And whenever a fighter starts out kicking a lot in the opening round, and they're not a Wonder Boy Thompson, they're not somebody who has a really long kickboxing background or a karate background where that's normally what they do, worry about their gas tank. It is the heaviest weapon, are your legs. It takes a lot of energy to use them, especially consistently. We're throwing them all the time. They need to be used sparingly if you're going to be efficient, if it's not usually your thing. So that was one thing where Karine Silva came out throwing a bunch of teep kicks and rage fighting kicks and all that stuff. And I went, oh, if you're not used to that, it's really fatiguing. It really wears you out. And it did. She didn't finish strong in round number 3. She seemed to kind of run out of gas a little bit. Araujo, once again, controlled range very well. Popped her, moved. Didn't get into the kind of young buck exchanges that favor a younger, hungrier fighter. And Viviane just fought really, really well and really, really smart. And Karine Silva, this is a big learning lesson for her. Of course, she's not done, especially in this division where they don't have a ton of talent. Karine Silva can move on if she learns well from this one. And Viviane Araujo, great win for her. Her best win in a long time. So Viviane Araujo pulls off the upset by unanimous decision. A lot of decisions on this one, by the way. Bo Nickal versus Paul Craig. I can't wait to get into this one. Bo Nickal didn't land a single takedown, didn't attempt a single takedown against Paul Craig. He stood there kickboxing, and it was boring. He kept his striking looks amateurish, right? It's a bunch of overhand lefts, a bunch of winging stuff. Didn't set anything up. His movement isn't very fluid. It isn't very smooth. I understand in a sense what he was trying to do, which is I can win without wrestling. Look how well-rounded I am. But your striking didn't look great. It certainly didn't look good enough to beat a contender at 185. And that's where you are right now, unfortunately. The problem, and I talked about this in the prediction video, you are 28 years old. You had an international wrestling career, so you didn't really start MMA until late. You don't have a lot of years to get there, right? You got to be really good at 28 in modern MMA. You can't learn on the job and be, he needs some work at 28. You don't have a lot of years. It's just the nature of UFC right now, and he's in a very competitive division. So the problem is his striking didn't look very good against Paul Craig, who's not a great striker. Crowd was chanting overrated, which I happen to agree. I've never been really high on Bo Nickal. I see a lot of technical problems with his style. Somebody in the comments section was like, oh, yeah, man, you're just obsessed with jiu-jitsu. His grappling's very good. Yeah, his takedown's very good. But when you look at his submission game, it's amateurish. It's, purple belt, blue belt stuff, So the problem is he doesn't have anything outside of his wrestling that's going to get him through a tough fight. And the problem is the contenders at 185, the former champions, the former contenders, those experienced guys that are going to be his next fight, they can stop that thing, right? They're going to control range well enough because one of the things about Khamzat Chimaev when he goes for the takedown, he's real tight with his defense. He doesn't give you a lot of openings coming in. His striking is very, very good. Remember, Gerald Meerschaert crushed him in 15 seconds. So you have to respect his striking. You can't just go all in on stopping the takedown because then he'll knock you out. So one of the things that makes Khamzat Chimaev's takedown so good, even though he doesn't have the credentials of Bo Nickal, is he has the threat of his striking. Where you can't go in there and go, I'm going to stop his wrestling and win. I have to be aware of the striking. I have to keep my eyes kind of on the strikes coming at me. I can't really, just go all in on stopping his wrestling. You can with Bo Nickal at this point. I didn't see it. Never hurt Paul Craig. Never overwhelmed him. And once again, not a great striker. So the next level guy he faces is going to have the experience to deal with his striking. All they have to do is deal with his wrestling. And the thing about his submission game not being top shelf is he can win rounds wrestling. He can't put you away. We haven't seen devastating ground and pound. We haven't seen a great submission game. So his wrestling is the kind that's going to keep you there. But he's not going to necessarily finish you. And so even if you give up a round number one, okay, I got 2 more rounds to beat you. Right? It isn't like somebody with a great submission game. For example, a Charles Oliveira is going to take you down and he's going to transition to something and finish your ass. Bo doesn't have that. So I see big problems in the near future for Bo Nickal. I didn't see a guy who's going to threaten those mid-level guys, those former contenders, those kind of fighters. And when you look at all-time great champions, pick one, right? Anybody. Almost without exception, they blew away the Paul Craigs of the world, right? They blew away the guys until they got to the mid-level, until they got to those former contenders, they were just destroying guys. And then you get to that next level, and then you obviously have to make adjustments. Some just blew through that level too. But the way I equate it is like playoff football, right? The team that has the 14-3 record, looking really, really good, they're blowing everybody away in the regular season. Then the playoffs, and it gets difficult. The problem is Bo Nickal is having trouble with the opening regular season games, right? He should blow away Paul Craig. And he didn't, and that's why everyone was chanting. And I see problems ahead for Bo Nickal, even though he did win a unanimous decision. So, moving on. Charles Oliveira, Michael Chandler. By the way, I called Bo Nickal to win. I called Charles Oliveira to win over Michael Chandler. Mike fought like Mike. Mike came in with that rah-rah, trying to get a knockout with every punch kind of style. His defense, when under duress, all Mike does is back up and circle. That's all Mike does. He doesn't slip. He doesn't make you miss. He shells up and you hit him and he backs up and he circles, which takes a lot of energy, by the way, to go and move around and move your legs like that. It's much more efficient to move your head and slip and rip and worry about counters. So Mike came out throwing power punches. Charles Oliveira looked loose. He looked accurate. His punches had good snap. He was nice and relaxed. He looked like a seasoned championship level fighter in the UFC. Mike looks like Mike. And as I've said before, Mike has a 50% chance of beating any 155-pounder on earth in the first 2 rounds. The bad sign in this one was Charles owned those first 2 rounds. First 4 rounds were not close at all. Charles was landing good punches. Charles was the guy getting the takedown. His ground transitions were good. Mike had good defense, but had no real answers for the attack of Charles Oliveira. Could never really get his attack going. And after the fight, of course, Dana White saying he'll have a home here in the UFC as long as he wants to fight. Sure, he's exciting. You'll always get your money's worth out of a Michael Chandler fight. But those first 4 rounds, you saw why Mike isn't going to be a champion in the UFC. He has one speed. He has one gear. I was talking to Paulie Malignaggi. I work for ProBox TV. If you guys don't know, check me out on ProBoxTV.com. I do a daily boxing show for them. I do their live fights. And my co-hosts, my color, are Chris Algieri and Paulie Malignaggi. And I was talking to Paulie one time about what makes a great amateur or a great professional in boxing. And he said, number one, you got to work on your power because it isn't just point fighting like it is in the amateurs. And you have to vary your punching speed. He said, you can't go bang, 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 bang for 12 rounds. You can do it for 3. You can't do it for 12. So you have to have various speeds. You got to relax sometimes and throw, pitter-pat punches. Then bam, then hit him with something big. And then bam, 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 and then flurry. You have to have 5 or 6 different gears to be a successful professional. And Mike has one gear. He has one jab. He has one right hand. He has one leg kick. And he has one speed for all these things. And the one thing that would really benefit Mike if he has the time or inclination to change this is varying up his jab, because he has a good right hand, but he has one kind of jab. Bang! That powerful slinging jab where he's trying to knock you out with the jab. Because he only has one, it's easy to read, and it negates his right hand because he never really has a setup for it other than the sharp right hand. He doesn't, have a pawing jab. He doesn't have a probing jab. He doesn't have all the different kind of jabs. You can have that snapping jab that doesn't do a lot of damage, but it's really accurate. He doesn't have any of those things. So he doesn't really set up his power hand very well. And so Mike just did the basic things he does. No takedown. He was really obviously respectful of the ground game of Charles Oliveira until round 5. And then those shots to the back of the head I thought were egregious. They were right in front of the referee. Don't know why he didn't call any of them. Mike got away with a lot of them there. And then at the end, he gives up his back and tries to slam his way out of it because he's Mike. And, Charles Oliveira comfortably wins 4 rounds to get a decision. I think this is hopefully, I don't know how I'll say it, the end of Mike at he's one away from a title shot. I think this is the end of that. So normally what you do with a guy like Mike is, okay, he's not going to beat Justin Gaethje, Dustin Poirier, Charles Oliveira, certainly not going to get a shot against Islam Makhachev. You downgrade him, and he fights the Paddy Pimblets, the Benoit Saint-Denis, the up-and-coming 55ers, whatever. He also talked about, of course, waiting around for Conor McGregor. I don't know what the hell he's thinking there. I don't think Conor ever fights again. It's, will Mike take the downgrade? Will he fight those up-and-comers? Because I think we've seen what Mike does at the elite level. He's fun. He's exciting. He's not going to win. And so I think he would normally get a downgrade. I think that's probably where he goes if he accepts it. We'll see. Still has exciting fights. Still a lot of fun, but he's not going to beat the elite of the elite. Charles looked fantastic. Does he beat Islam? Islam's a lot tougher. So, looking good against Michael Chandler is one thing. Looking good against Islam, who blew him out of the water the first time, is a different thing. But I think maybe fight after next, we see Islam take on Charles in a rematch. I'd like to see it. Charles is one of the most talented guys I've ever seen in MMA, period, for any weight class. 155, definitely. So I think Charles does get another title shot. Might take a fight or two, but I think he gets there. He looked fantastic. And once again, guys, taking notes, man. If you want to be a fighter, loose, relaxed. It's this mastery of tight but relaxed. Charles has that. He doesn't give you any openings. He's not so relaxed that he's got his hands low and relying on his speed. He's hands high and he's tight, but he's relaxed. He's not using a lot of energy. Mike is all bound up with all this power, and you see the difference between a guy who has held a world title and a guy who hasn't in the UFC. So on to our main event. Jon Jones, Stipe Miocic. If you're keeping track, I'm 3-1 going into this fight. I picked Jon Jones. Jon Jones won. I think any idiot could see that Jon Jones is going to win this. Some people in the comments, I understand you guys, I love Stipe too. Oh, he's got a great right hand. That might be his key to victory. Oh, if he land that big right hand. The problem is Jon Jones controls range so well that right hand never becomes a factor. You're never comfortable to throw it. You're never in the right place at the right time to make your power a factor. Ever. That's what the guy does. Is he controls range, does the Jon Jones thing, hands in the face. There are a couple where I thought he was going to get an eye poke because he was doing this the whole time. He controls range so well that you don't throw. You're just never in the right position to throw your power. Also, a blind right hand isn't going to work. Jon Jones is going to see it coming. You have to set up with a jab. And with Jon Jones popping in with the jab, Stipe never set up his own jab, which sets up the right hand. The right hand doesn't work all by itself, generally speaking. So Jon Jones controlled range, was picking him apart. Stipe looked flat. He looked old. He looked unsure of himself. Couldn't really get started. Was never the initiator. Was always waiting for Jon Jones to make a mistake to let him back in the fight. Elite fighters, guys, the best of the best, and right now Jon Jones is my GOAT, they don't do that. They don't make the mistakes that let you back into a fight. They don't do that. So Jon Jones is not an idiot. He's going to keep range, pot shot you, wait for you to screw up, and he's going to land something big. And that's exactly what he did. Round number 3, spinning kick right to the ribs, dropped Stipe, finished him with strikes on the ground. It was never competitive. It was never close. So I'm 4-1. I'm not doing jumping jacks, celebrating. They were all big favorites. I think you could see every single one of these fights. Great job for Viviane Araujo getting the upset. But the only question now is where Jon Jones goes. Now that it's kind of Aspinall or bust as far as the UFC is concerned. Dana White says he has no interest in making the Pereira fight. Jon Jones, is he angling for money? Maybe, which I support. Damn it, get paid all you can. Also, what Dana White's saying, could be the biggest fight in UFC history. You're telling Jon Jones it's worth a lot of money. To say it's the biggest fight in UFC history, all right, then pay me F you money if it's the biggest fight in UFC history. Usually Dana will kind of downplay it a bit and go, oh, I'll make it, maybe we will, maybe we won't. Maybe he gives up the title to Tom Aspinall and we're done with it. If you play up the fight itself, then you're talking yourself into paying a lot of money for it, because obviously the fighter's going to say, hey, you just said it's the biggest fight in UFC history. I want to get paid the most in UFC history. So Jon Jones angling for more money, which once again I support for the most part. I want to see the fight happen. There's a fine line between I want more money and you're ducking somebody, because a lot of times those two go together and one is a justification for the other. Fighters never say, I don't want to fight that guy because I think I'll lose. They'll go, I'm not getting paid enough to fight that guy, or whatever. They make up some other excuse. So the line between a duck and I support him wanting more money. I don't support him ducking Tom Aspinall. How you separate those two things is understandably difficult. But the future is going to be interesting for Jon Jones. He's the pound-for-pound GOAT to me. But to be considered in the heavyweight GOAT conversation, I don't think he gets there with the time he has left. If he blows away Aspinall, you could make the case. You could make the case. But that's a video for another time. Appreciate you. Give me a like, a subscribe. I'll talk to you soon.